Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Now, today we're here to talk about the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. And to join us on that is Legal Affairs Editor, Mr. Scott DeCosenza. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mark.
Scott, please give us a rundown of the latest happenings in this case.
Okay, Mark. Well, there was a long and circuitous route to the appointment of a special prosecutor, which is what has just happened. The Republican governor and Attorney General of Georgia have appointed Joyette Holmes, who is basically a prosecutor from Atlanta. That's an elected position, but she wasn't elected to it. She was appointed after it became vacant. So she was appointed by the Republican governor of Georgia to that position and has now been appointed by the Republican Attorney General as an independent prosecutor in this case. It's important to add that she is a black woman and is the first woman and the first black person to serve as DA for Atlanta.
Now, Scott, this case took around 2 months to actually begin, to get to an arrest. Can you give us a bit of background on why that might have been?
There are a number of factors, Mark. I would say that, firstly, let's say that the Arbery family and sort of activists are suggesting that the delay was based on one reason, race alone, mostly, and a kind of blue wall of silence. Basically, the alleged shooters have deep ties to Georgia law enforcement. One was, I think, some sort of police officer, badge-carrying member, whether they were an investigator for a DA's office or something like that. And so there were recusals, and the COVID-19 crisis has shut down grand juries, for instance, in Georgia. And there have been prosecutors, Mark, who declined to prosecute this case because they, after looking at the evidence available, have said that no crime was committed. So all those things have taken place. And what we recently had was the videotape of the shooting itself was released, and that resulted in just a tidal wave of interest and outrage by members of the public who have been told that Mr. Arbery was gunned down while jogging through a community simply because of the color of his skin. He's a black man.
That certainly is the narrative that's coming out now. Scott, how do you think this case is going to progress through the courts? Do you think it will reach a prosecution?
Well, it's definitely, the prosecutor's been assigned and they have been arrested. So we'll see whether or not they're able to, whether the persons who may have shot are going to assert a self-defense claim, which I think is most likely, Mark, or some other claim. The videotape seems to show Mr. Arbery taking a hard turn and charging at the man with the shotgun. If that's the case, then he may be able to articulate a claim of self-defense. There are other sort of complicated legal claims to unpack as to whether they had the legal right to sort of confront and approach him to start with. So those things will all have to be unpacked. But I think there will be a simple self-defense claim against an attack by Mr. Arbery if murder charges do make it to trial.
And any predictions on how this will turn out?
Well, it's going to be bad for America, I can tell you that. The worst thing possible is that we have race hustlers like Ben Crump, who basically rode the Trayvon Martin case to fame and fortune on the backs of social cohesion and racial unity. And sad to say, that looks like the playbook that's going on here in the Arbery case.
All right, Scott, many thanks for your input on this. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
And thanks to you at home.